the russellbrand experience. Something interesting is happening between the leftist influencers and their audience. This monologue does not say as much about their position on democracy as it does on optics. In other words, everything is about clout, and you don't gotta be good to look good. So it seems like Vaush and JK Rowling took a week off from trending in order to allow russellbrand center stage. And if you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, well, Twitter is a funny funky place. russellbrand was trending because he got clipped. He got clipped in the worst possible way because he did something that I frequently do, and it's highly recommended that you do not do this if you want to flourish and have an ever-growing channel. And that is to confront your own fan base, your own audience, the people who sign up and subscribe to watch you. That's right, russellbrand actually threw in criticism against the left, specifically tactics used by people who are extreme on that side, and specifically Justin Trudeau. He was very, very critical of Justin, and he kind of drew parallels and metaphors in order to point out the irony in his current political views regarding the war in Ukraine. So of course, Russell signed up to get himself completely cancelled. That's just absolutely fair, and what you get is what you get. Okay, before I go into a more reactionary type of content, I just want to remind you, please do not send anybody in this video mention any type of hate, harassment, bullying, mean, negative, disparaging, horrible, terrible comments. It's just straight up rude, and I don't condone it.
Is that Justin Trudeau lost his authority to comment on issues like this when he treated the truckers in the manner that he did, when they introduced emergency powers and then did not revoke them, that gave them the ability to freeze people's bank accounts. That is an assault on democracy. There's no question that Russia's actions in Ukraine are deplorable, but what right do you have to offer that critique when you are no real friend of democracy when it don't suit you?
Russell is coming in with a fire. Okay. Before you get trigger fingers, before you have to start defending or fighting somebody in the comments, just for a second, Occam's razor, right? What is the most simplest answer to the question what Russell is saying here? Is Russell commenting on the war in the Ukraine? No, he is not. Is he commenting on the state of affairs regarding vaccinations, pro or anti, in Canada? No, he is not. What is he commenting on? He is saying that Trudeau is upholding a double standard. He's basically calling out Trudeau for upholding the standards of democracy when it seems appropriate. In other words, when the optics are good. Currently, if you are leading a country and you're saying Russia bad, Ukraine good, because democracy, then you are doing something that is optically good, right? Okay, but it could also be sincere. I mean, I don't fucking know Trudeau like that. We're not that close. But what he's saying is that, okay, fine, so where was that energy for your own people? That is what he's commenting on. So it's basically hypocrisy and double standards with regards to the definition of democracy when it suits him. That is the thing that he's calling out. He's not commenting on the war, he's not commenting on COVID, he's not any of those things. He's simply calling out hypocrisy. So that is the fundamental approach that we have to understand and maintain throughout this entire video, because based on what I've seen in the quote tweets, people are missing that part of the argument.
See a bit of a slippage. A bit of a slippage in our democracies.
You want to watch your own slippages, mate?
Countries turning towards slightly more authoritarian leaders.
Yeah, I feel like I saw a bit of authoritarianism in Canada when truckers had pepper spray used against them, when bank accounts were frozen, when GoFundMe sites were shut down. That's different. When other people do authoritarianism, they do it with a funny accent, and it's about time we stopped it.
Look, the guy's funny. He made me laugh. He made me laugh. Whether you agree with him or not, he's entertaining as shit. Okay. So what his problem here is that basically, how dare you, Justin Trudeau? How fucking dare you? You had a place and a point in which it was your time to be a leader. It was your time to stand up and say, this is what democracy should look like by example. And now when it's basically not your chair, not your problem.
Oh. Unless it's inconvenient, then they're meaningless. Because if the values and principles of a democracy are strong, what that means is when it don't suit you, those values and principles are still there. Oh no, people are protesting, they don't agree with us, they don't agree with mandates, but because we've got these values and principles, we're going to just have to allow them to do that. Not just change our values and principles and shut this down and just call them things that would facilitate shutting them down. If they're racist and misogynist, we can shut them down, because we all know that racism and misogyny are wrong.
Okay, so this point might seem simple and very obviously right or very obviously wrong, but I actually want to delve deeper here, because this is actually reminding me of what Vaush said in response to the JK Rowling situation. Just briefest of context, he got into a little Twitter spat. Basically, he was being misogynistic towards JK Rowling in order to call her out for being a transphobe. And then, ironically, a bunch of people who agree that JK Rowling is a transphobe on the left actually called out Vaush, saying, yeah, okay, look, she is a transphobe, but that doesn't give you any right to be a misogynist. And they were digging up shit and dirt from way back in the day. JK Rowling was retweeting this. This shit was great. If you don't have Twitter, if you don't follow me, you missed all of it. Obviously follow me first before you care about them. But anyway, she basically optically destroyed him. And this was very interesting because this means that Vaush had to come out and tell people of the audience, everybody at large, that basically optics ain't everything. Like, when the person you dislike the most makes a valid point, that was kind of his point. He was saying that can we curb our optics?
You people, I can't believe you people. I really can't. I think you're all doing apologia right now, and I think that personally, apologia in line with JK Rowling's transphobia is infinitely worse than me being misogynistic on Twitter on International Women's Day, which, grow a fucking spine, you fucking babies. Oh, wow, you should all be clapping like seals. This is funny as shit. And instead, you're whining and crying. To the people in my community, I forgive you for the mistakes that you've made. I understand that when I talk about the necessity of optics, you're under the impression that means that we should engage in a kind of respectability politic where we constantly, conform our behavior to optimize the, our image in the minds of the opposition, to make it impossible for them to criticize us. I got news for you folks, okay? And I feel I'm not trying to as long as we're defending trans people, they're the optical weak point, okay?
And that was interesting because this was also a dig at people who typically identify as woke, who would use stuff like optics as an important mark of who you are as a person in order to counter your character when in the debate. So he was doing the exact same thing that russellbrand is doing right now. In both their cases, they both identify as left, they both have these types of audiences who would do this, but now they are deciding to say that actually we are going slightly too far with this optics thing. Actually being misogynist, racist, or using other type of tactics is maybe not as bad as the thing we are calling out. So for example, with Vaush was saying, yeah, okay, I was misogynist, I own it, I love it, that's who I am, I identify as this, but what JK Rowling is doing is so much worse. Can we not move the conversation away from the key point? What russellbrand is saying is that, look, we are talking about people's rights in their own bodies, what they get to do, their medical choices for their own life. The idea of them being racist, sexist, homophobic, whatever, is really only matters if you want to cancel them for other reasons outside of the priority. So both of these people are actually calling out people who do generally care about optics, i.e. both of their audiences. Very, very interesting, and that might be the reason why both of them were in fact trending.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has said he's seen a slippage in democratic values across the world, which has emboldened Russian President Vladimir Putin to think he could invade Ukraine without impunity. Of all the ridiculous analysis I've witnessed since the start of this, I think the stupidest is a slippage has emboldened Putin. You know what's happened? What? Go on, you're Prime Minister of somewhere. Tell us. Well, there's been a slippage, and the slippage has emboldened Putin. It's emboldened him to Ukraine. He'd said a foreseen slippage. He really rates this word slippage, didn't he? He said a foreseen slippage in countries adhering to their democratic principles made Mr. Putin think he could get away with it in Ukraine. What he's trying to say is he's trying to underwrite an aggressive response. That's what that is. Oh, we weren't democratic enough. What do you mean democratic enough? Didn't militarise all sorts of zones, didn't arm and weaponise potential allies in that region, aren't imposing hard enough sanctions, aren't acting like we have the moral authority to shut down Putin, which, you know, that's for you and I and all of us to calculate and judge and decide, and God knows there's a baffling array of intersecting vectors to consider there, and I would say too complex to be put down to a slippage.
God, Russell, why you gotta be so extra? Look, what he's actually saying, and you can disagree or agree with him, I don't care. What he is trying to say here is that secretly what Trudeau is trying to say when he's using the word slippage is that we should have used stronger authoritarian powers over the people in order to ensure that they basically stay in line. We should have used more sanctions, more brutal power, more nuclear, whatever basically power you can have in order to force people to get in line. So basically he's saying that Trudeau wants to democracy them to death. Yeah, his argument relies heavily on interpreting what Trudeau is saying, reading between the lines. What he is blatantly saying, though, this much we can say, is that the people need democracy. But that shit is kind of vague, and that's the kind of thing that you say when you're a leader, you know, so nobody can actually, like, quote you or clip you in the way that Russell was. So we can't say for sure what he means by the concept of slippage. But it does seem like he is suggesting that a lack of democracy, a lack of freedom, a lack of Western mentality or rules and regulations led to what we are now seeing, led to the audacity that Putin has to make this move. And Russell is countering this by saying, actually, son, you have the same audacity, the exact same audacity, and again, how fucking dare you?
Misuse of logic they won't apply in order to pursue their own agenda. You know what's led to Putin? Go on, what? Joe Rogan. What? By slippage? We're shutting your bank account down. He also praised countries around the world, saying, no, this is a moment to stand for democracy against disinformation, misinformation and propaganda. If ever there was a moment to stand up for democracy, it's when you're the leader of a country and there's protests that you may not agree with, to create an opportunity for discourse and conversation, to listen to people that you disagree with and see where you might be right and they might be right and where both of you could be wrong, and where together in the crucible of public discourse and democracy, the very thing that you claim to stand and fly flags for, you can create systems that are reflective of the varying requirements of a diverse population. All things that when it suits them, they say they support, and when it comes to crunch time, they shut down and pepper spray into oblivion.
Energy. Holy shit, Russell, that is ruthless. Okay, let's quickly just go back to this quote from Trudeau where he's talking about democracy against disinformation, misinformation, propaganda. Here's the shit though, and one of the main reasons why I never, if I can possibly avoid it, get into politics. Those things are all high-key subjective. You can make the case that something is propaganda if ever it gives you any sense of hope. You can argue that music is propaganda, and it sure as shit has been. Art as well, right? It's a highly subjective thing. So if you are the ruler of a country and you decide, you dictate literally what counts as propaganda and what does not, well, shit, that is quite literally one of the trademarks of an authoritarianship. So that fucking quote is scary shit and does lend credibility to this agenda, this conspiracy that Russell is on about. And now, once again, you may agree or disagree with Russell, but his bottom line here is that there was a time for you to show your democratic beliefs. There was a time for you to be the lefty we all trusted and hoped and believed in. All the things you are spewing and saying right now, when it was really hard, where you had to show that you were all the things that you say you are, you fucking failed. So essentially, it's not that you are wrong, it's that you're the wrong person to be saying this. You do not have the backbone required to make a wild ass claim such as you just did, sir. Fucking brutal. Holy shit, Russell.
Government threaten to regulate social media companies if they don't censor misinformation. If you don't start doing what we want you to do, we are going to regulate you. This is what we hear again and again, applied to cryptocurrencies, social media, all the emergent technologies that present opportunity for ordinary people to trade or communicate in ways that are previously unregulated, are now being controlled, so that the information is controlled, so that the flow of money is controlled, so that the economic aspect is controlled, all in the name of what? A democracy that shows that in the moment when it would be most apposite to be democratic, folds up into authoritarianism.
Look, I can't afford to smoke the type of shit necessary in order to fully understand the whole Illuminati, reptilian underworld and elite 1% thing that he probably refers to right here. But what I can say, where he does have some kind of a point, is how can you possibly, and there's a bunch of theories to substantiate this idea, so it's not a new idea, but how could you possibly trust the people in power to tell you how to become in power yourself? So if they are telling you that we are limiting your options of freedom for your own good, how could you possibly know it to be true? And what possible incentive would they have to do so? So that's kind of I don't know. Like I agree with the whole double standard of Trudeau thing, or rather I can see the logic of how we got there. But I'm not gonna co-sign this idea that Trudeau is actively trying to keep people oppressed. But the links between telling people basically how they can spend their money and the options that they have to choose to live or to die, or what they may and may not do, whether it's for their own harm, whether it's misinformation, disinformation, or propaganda. Limiting those options, experiences, and choices in people is, again, a trademark of a more authoritarian and dictatorship. Now when Stardust had her debate with Kim regarding the truckers in Canada, she actually raised the most valid counter-argument to this, and this is that we basically live in a society, right? So you have to follow the rules of the government that you elect, especially when they're elected democratically. Otherwise, you can leave. It's your choice. So what Russell is hinting at is that the option of leaving might not necessarily be the case, because you might not even know that you can leave. And by that I don't even mean physically. I mean stuff like through communications, through the internet, through empowering yourself, like crypto, something that is not located or centralized in one specific region physically. It's online, basically. So you need access, which means you need information. And when those powers limit the information, you might not be able to reach it. So that's as logical as I can make this point. Oh, Russell.
Police have the authority to push back crowds on foot or with horses, use pepper spray, enter trucks and other vehicles by whatever means necessary, and make arrests en masse. Now, whatever that is, it ain't open democracy. No one voted for it. No one said they wanted it. It was a legal protest against mandates that the protesters didn't agree with. And if you don't agree with them, it is yet more beholden upon you to hear their voices. If what underwrites your moral high ground are the principles of democracy, you better be sure that you live by them. The Canadian Civil Liberties Association stated, "The federal government has not met the threshold necessary to invoke the Emergencies Act." That's a democratic body saying that what he did was undemocratic.
Wait. Just hear him out. He's not saying specifically that what Trudeau did is objectively wrong or bad. What he is saying is that the principles of democracy that he's now sitting on top of, that he's now preaching into the world and telling everybody this is the right thing to do, those exact same morals seem to not be held up equally. So forget real quickly the actual situation. Just Occam's razor. What is he saying simplistically? He's saying that on the one hand, Trudeau is saying when it's optically easy, he's saying that democracy is good. We should rather talk and communicate, have open dialogue, and accommodate each other to consider everybody's behalf instead of having an authoritarianship, instead of saying, I know best and you'll do what I say, right? Which is what Putin is doing. He's invading Ukraine because he quote-unquote knows best. That's what he believes, and he's trying to impose his knowledge onto the people. And on the other hand, when it wasn't optically sound to be democratic, to hold up those views when the situation was more difficult and more close to home, those principles seemed gone. He wasn't that open to discussion. He was pretty much pro the idea of I know best and therefore you should follow my rules. Now, regardless of whether you think anything about this is right or wrong, you have to acknowledge that there seems to be some level of double standard, and that double standard seems to correlate to the optics globally. That is the only point here that Russell is trying to get across.
Of Canada. Obviously, the war in Ukraine and the crushing of protests in Canada are two separate things. This war is a humanitarian disaster. It is wrong. What I'm saying is that if the reason that this war is wrong, or one of the reasons, is because it is against democratic principles, then you must ensure that where it is possible, where there is no militarized state opposing your ability to be democratic, you should be democratic. Otherwise, you do not have the same argument. You can criticize Russia for many, many reasons. You can condemn the actions of Russia, quite rightly, for many reasons. What you can't do is claim to be an exemplar of democracy if whenever you get the opportunity to be tyrannical, you take it.
This is it. This was what he was clipped for. This is the moment. So this comes near the end of the video, and you can see how if only this section was taken, perhaps it wasn't right or perhaps it wasn't wrong. However, most people don't actually bother to go look at the original source and find the context. So yeah, look, this was hilarious mostly because everybody who absolutely despised this point came out saying in the quote tweets and in the comments, in the replies, that he is the leftist Joe Rogan, right? High key problematic. Other people on the absolute other side saying, yes, hold that leftist Trudeau up to standard, tell him he's wrong and hypocritical and he was being wrong to force the truckers to do anything. Yes, do that. Those people are saying in the quote tweets, in the replies and in the comments that he is the leftist Joe Rogan. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we found the absolute neutral point, the meeting of sides. Joe Rogan.
Oh, deep thought. We want you to tell us the answer.
The answer to what?
The answer to life, the universe.
Politics.
We'd really like an answer. Something simple.
I have to think about that. Return to this place in exactly 7.5 million years.
I really believe if Michelle Obama runs, she wins. She's good. She's great. She's the wife of the best president that we have had in our lifetime. I've never voted right-wing in my life. I consider universal basic income a really good idea. I want free college education. Take it easy. Hello, Bernie.
How are you, Joe?
Wonderful. Pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I like Tulsi and I like Bernie. That's it.
Oh, yeah?
Everybody else can eat shit.
Look at you, fucking progressive.
Yeah. Right-wing thing is just an easy way to dismiss it, because I'm not right-wing.
I could never. Oh, Look, this isn't even the worst thing. This isn't even the top 10 worst things that Russell has ever said. This isn't even the most far-fetched thing that he's ever said. In fact, I can't relate to 90% of his content, but this shit was hilarious. I very much enjoyed this. And look, if there's one piece of advice that I want to give into the world, if you yourself do not make videos and you frequently try to interact with influencers or talk about them on Twitter or whatever your thing is, can we normalize this idea of every and any influencer just being there for entertainment purposes only, and as literally as possible? I mean that. So in other words, just, you know, treat everybody like they're insanely dumb unless they actually have the power to influence policy. Then be serious about them. Then call them out on everything. But russellbrand making a YouTube video should, like, literally, logically should have no real world implications, like at all, not even slightly. You should not lose sleep over this. You should be entertained, or you should say thanks, next. Those should be the options. Getting upset is a choice again, and it's a bad choice, and it's your own choice. You should be also then held accountable for the negative feelings you're experiencing due to the fact that he is the leftist Joe Rogan, #verified. But look, if you are legitimately upset by this, I can offer you two things. First of all, the good news. Hassan Abi tweeted this. Yes, our boy got robbed. How nice is it that he's finally living up to his own political views and distributing his health? Fuck yeah. And the second thing is, of course, as always, I'm just a thought with an opinion and I don't know shit about fuck. So don't take me seriously, like I said earlier. Pila. Look, being anti-war used to mean that you had to be white and dress like this. Let's just be thankful for what we have.